你会设虚拟背景吗？
So welcome to this symposium, China and Italy. This event is made in cooperation, partnership with the UNESCO Chair on Health Education and Sustainable Development set at Federico II University of Naples, Italy. And the chair is held by Professor Annamaria Colao, who is also the president of the Italian Society of Endocrinology. I present here her most warm greetings. And it is an honor for me to open this first day of China and Italy seminar with a keynote lecture of a very well-known scientific person who is committed to Mediterranean diet since a long time, Professor Antonia Trichopoulou. She's a medical doctor with a PhD in nutrition and biochemistry. She has been for a long time a full professor at Athens University School of Medicine and the president of the Federation of the European Nutrition Societies. And she has made a lot of outstanding studies that have created the evidence to recognize the Mediterranean diet as immaterial heritage of UNESCO. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce her lecture on Mediterranean diet and health benefits, updated scientific evidence in this session that will try in a kind of transdisciplinary way, as we are at this kind of conference, to present and compare different type of diets adopted in Mediterranean area, such as Italy, Greece, and other areas, and China. We have here some very welcomed hosts, such as Professor Chaoming, Weng, and Professor Shen from University of Bejing, and we also have here Professor Annalisa Santucci, who is the Chief of Department at the University of Siena, and Dr. Giovanna Muscogiuri from the University of Naples, Federico II. Welcome to everybody, and I leave the scene to Professor Antonia Trichopoulou for the beginning of her lecture. Thanks, Antonia, to be with us.
Hi, good morning or good afternoon to everybody, depending on which part of the world you are now attending this conference. I am in Greece and it's early afternoon, and I have to tell you that it's not only a privilege to address such a distinguished audience, but it's a pleasure also. It's a pleasure because I'm going to talk about Mediterranean diet. It's a pleasure because today it's an activity. It's in which China and Italy, they contribute and they participate. We are not very often have the opportunity to discuss scientific issues with our Chinese colleagues, more specifically about Mediterranean diet. And now I will enter my presentation. Please give me some time to share the screen. I did that before, but now,
take your time, Antonia.
Yes, more. Okay. Okay, here we are. So, I'm going to talk about, sorry, just a moment, please. Yes. I'm going to talk about the Mediterranean diet and the health benefits, and to a certain extent, update the scientific evidence related to the Mediterranean diet. But as an ancient Greek philosopher said, the 5th century before Christ, and I dare to mention philosopher before Christ because the conference is organized by Italians and Chinese. Both countries, they have a long of tradition and a lot of history. So, as we have in Greece, so this philosopher, the 5th century before Christ, said that the beginning of a right education is the examination of words. That's, I think, is very important before talking about Mediterranean diet, to clarify, to define what is meant by the term Mediterranean diet. First of all, when we are talking about Mediterranean diet, we are talking about a way of living. It's not a simple calculation of nutrients and calories. Here in this sea, for millennia, boats, people, ideas, religion, dietary habits, they were circulated at the end, the Mediterranean pattern, the Mediterranean way of living was developed. So, if we're talking about defining what is meant by the term Mediterranean diet, at least the way I'm dealing with this topic in the today presentation, and for many other colleagues all around the world, Mediterranean diet, the traditional Mediterranean diet, is the dietary pattern prevailing in the Mediterranean basin in the areas where olive trees grow and when before the 60s. I know that some of you will say, what only where olive trees grow? Because Mediterranean diet do not exist without olive oil. Olive oil is pivotal, is central to the Mediterranean diet. Of course, when we're talking about the traditional Mediterranean diet, we could talk about type of Mediterranean diet, style of Mediterranean diet, modified Mediterranean diet. But when we're talking about Mediterranean diet as such, and the traditional one, we mean that it's the diet which was prevailing in the olive tree areas before the 60s, because as you know, before the 60s, a lot of socioeconomic changes happen all around the world, and we change our dietary habits. Not only to say, we change also the way food how we are producing the food. So having said that, here you can see the visual presentation of the Mediterranean diet in the form of a pyramid. And from the beginning, I want to say that it's a plant diet with many common elements with the Mediterranean, with the Chinese diet, because the Chinese diet also is a plant-based diet. We consume, as you do, a lot of fruit, vegetables, cereals. You consume rice, we consume cereals in the form of polenta in Italy, couscous in Northern Africa, bread as in Greece. Having said that, those are the main characteristics of the 9 characteristics of the Mediterranean diet. And I mention that because, as I will mention later on in more detail, we use these 9 characteristics in order to develop a score, a very simple score, in order to assess the adherence to Mediterranean diet, the Mediterranean diet score. So we develop a questionnaire, and according to the answers, we could say that this is following the Mediterranean diet, yes or no, or so much. don't, I'm sorry, but also there is something also about wine. Moderate to fight. I do not see the full slide. I don't know, because somewhere also we're talking about wine, provided
also
that,
without slide. You can proceed without slide.
Because when we're talking about wine, we're respecting the religious and societal habits. Some societies, for several reasons, they do not accept wine, and even they follow all the other characteristics of the Mediterranean diet. So in the former slides, I don't know why it didn't appear also this mention about wine. So it was first the Ansel Keys and his colleagues in the late 50s, early 60s, which they discovered the Mediterranean diet, and it was the first who, through the the famous 7-country studies, in which 7 countries they participated, including Greece, Italy, and Japan. I'm saying Japan because it's relatively close, it's an Asian country. Well, at the end of this study, Ansel Keys and his colleagues, they consider Mediterranean diet as a low saturated lipid diet. This is very important to clarify that, because at the beginning he said that olive oil was not natural, and the most important was that this diet was low saturated fat, and then conducive to a decrease of cardiovascular diseases due to the low cholesterol level. But through the time, a lot of scientists they were looking more carefully at the Mediterranean diet, and they addressed the issue of the olive oil and the other components of the Mediterranean diet, and not only studying the value of the Mediterranean diet for the cardiovascular diseases, but for other chronic diseases like diabetes, cancer, and so on. So you can see through this picture that how many papers they have been published since 1990 till today. It's an exponential increase in the papers which appear in the PubMed, in other research engine. And it's amazing the increase in how many papers every day they appear in the international literature. So those studies, they deal with Mediterranean diet mainly from an epidemiological point of view. There are ecological studies, case control study, prospective cohort study, and the last decade also randomized intervention studies. I will refer to one study. It was the very first one after the 60s, the many papers which they were published by the group of Ansel Keys. We forgot for several years the value of this study of the 60s. But in the 95, in the British Medical Journal, was published a small study, a small one, say, because of the size. Besides, were almost 200 elders living in a village very close to Athens, which they were followed more than 17 years old, and which they were followed for 4 years. And then it was to our great surprise, we discovered, after applying this Mediterranean diet score, which I mentioned before, after assessing their adherence to Mediterranean diet, it was found a 17-degree decrease in the mortality for every point of increase in the adherence to Mediterranean diet score. That was a great, we were expecting beneficial, the adherence to Mediterranean diet to be beneficial for longevity, but not at the level of 17% for a group of persons 70 years plus. Then we were fortunate enough to have in our hands, after several years, of a big cohort, the epic elderly cohort, the epic Greece cohort, consisting of more than 28,000 Greeks. And at that time, they were followed for 6 or 7 years. And then again, applying this Mediterranean diet score, it was found that total mortality was decreased by 25%. Remember this number, 25% for the person who the adherence to Mediterranean diet was associated with 2 units increase in the Mediterranean diet score. And then this person, they have also 33% less risk to die from coronary heart disease, and also 25% from several forms of cancer. This was a turning point for the acceptance of the Mediterranean diet beyond its beneficial effects only to coronary heart disease, and beyond its effects to longevity. Because for longevity, I think that more or less it's very well accepted because it has been documented several times. Then the previous study was a prospective study. Then my Spanish colleague, mainly Estruch and Miguel Gonzalez from Navarra and many, many others, they did a fantastic intervention study, having 7,000 at high risk persons, at high risk for cardiovascular diseases, and among them there were almost 3,000 diabetics too. And then they intervened. They have 2 groups. At the intervention group, they were suggesting to have Mediterranean diet, and then also they were offering every month, every week, to use extra virgin olive oil. And the other group was following a low-fat diet. Again, it was a great surprise that through this intervention, it was demonstrated that the group which adheres to Mediterranean diet and they were consuming extra virgin olive oil, they have 30% decrease in their acute myocardial infarction, stroke, or death from cardiovascular disease causes. So this was also great news, and this group followed, publishes a lot of papers relating Mediterranean diet with many other chronic diseases. But what I want also to point out right now is that having this epic elderly, the epic group of Greece, the epic is part of the European prospective study in which 10 centers all around Europe, they participate. The cohort is almost 500,000, 500,000. And from this, we said, okay, let's see how the elders, they react to the Mediterranean diet. The elders, not of Greece, but the elders all around Europe. Indeed, we have a cohort of more than 70,000 men and women aged 60 years plus from this epic big cohort. And they were exposed, and then the exposure in the statistical analysis was in Mediterranean diet score again. And the outcome, it was all-cause mortality. It was, again, well, and then I want also to clarify that we were using modified Mediterranean diet score, because in the traditional Mediterranean diet score, comprises the use of olive oil. You cannot check the beneficial effects of the other components of the Mediterranean diet pattern by using olive oil in Sweden or in Germany, for example, or in some Scandinavian countries, which they participated in this cohort. That's why we modified the score by saying instead of focusing on the olive oil, on a monounsaturated lipid, we were focusing, asking about the amount consumed of polyunsaturated acid. So, and we call this diet modified Mediterranean diet, but not traditional Mediterranean diet. I hope that I am clear. And then we found again that a higher degree of adherence to the Mediterranean diet was associated with age reduction on overall mortality. Remember that the true Mediterranean score in the elderly population was associated with 30% reduction, but still for the Central and Northern Europe, for the non-Mediterranean country, again, the modified Mediterranean score was benevolent for this population too. But the thing which strikes me the most is that using again this EPIC Greece cohort, we found, well, here is that in the previous paper, it was 27 reduction in overall mortality for the EPIC Greece cohort. But for the other, as I mentioned, it was 8%. But the issue which strikes me is that the Mediterranean diet score was assessed to persons who they had already myocardial infarction. And then it was found that person after the myocardial infarction, when the person who they followed the Mediterranean diet, they have reduced fatality from cardiac death. That's very important because this reduced fatality was at the level of 31%, which is higher than any other medication which is suggested to be followed after a myocardial infarction. Similar results, they were found in Italy from this study, Prevenzione trial, in which 11,000 survivors of myocardial infarction they were followed. And again, in this Italian population, it was found a 15% reduced risk of mortality per 1 unit increase in the Mediterranean diet score. In this study, their cohort was followed up for a mean of more than 6 years. So, as I mentioned before, in this PREDIMED study, they have enough data to check the efficiency of a dietary project to diabetic patients. And then again, they found that adherence to Mediterranean diet is improved the glycemic control in the diabetic patients. Again, you know that there are some cancers which they are very sensitive to nutrition, but we can, when we are talking about cancer, we do not talk for all the cancers, but a meta-analysis confirmed an important inverse association with adherence to Mediterranean diet and cancer mortality in general, and the risk of several cancer types, especially it's very important, as you know, for colorectal cancer. Mediterranean diet, the adherence to Mediterranean diet decrease the incidence of colorectal cancer. Again, a big issue, and indicatively, I will present some papers which they deal with the burning issue of cognition, because we are all over the world, we're getting old, all over the world we have problems with cognitive decline, and it's very difficult to assess the various forms, the various expressions of cognitive decline. Nevertheless, here and there are pieces of evidence that Mediterranean diet is beneficial for, not exactly, even for to some extent the prevention, and to some extent to deal with the cognitive decline in a better way. Again, this is a systematic review meta-analysis again, which deals with the global migration, semantic memory, global cognition, with the different forms of cognitive decline. And then again, there are indications that Mediterranean diet is beneficial also for the cognitive decline, which is very, very, very important for our society as we get older and older and older. Again, frailty. Frailty is a geriatric syndrome which beyond the endocrinology and beyond inflammation, which play a very, very important role in the development of frailty. Also, nutrition play an important role. It is amazing that, again, for frailty, adherence to Mediterranean diet, there's a lot of indication that it's benevolent. So, in general, well, it's recommended that older adults adopt the characteristics of a Mediterranean type diet to reduce their risk of chronic diseases, impair cognition, and frailty. This is very important also, but of course, the evidence is indicative. The evidence, we need more information in this area. And there are many groups which they are working very hard to provide us better data. But the problem is that, okay, we were talking that Mediterranean diet is beneficial for several diseases, many chronic diseases, and several others. Always in the literature they appear Mediterranean diet is good for that and that and that. But at least for the one which the evidence is robust, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, it's robust, the evidence in Mediterranean diet. It's improved the glycemic index, that it's reduced the risk for cardiovascular diseases. Which is the mechanism? And this is something which we do not know, but I want to bring to your attention one thing, that in all the studies in the Mediterranean, for the Mediterranean diet, it's the pattern which provides the most important statistical association. The individual foods, let's say the cereals, olive oil, fruit, vegetables, their influence in the beneficial effects of this diet is statistically less than the whole pattern, because one could claim that this is due to the fact that there is an interaction between the various nutrients which they are offered in the Mediterranean diet. It's not only the interaction among them in a biochemical way, it's an interaction in the absorption. Think for wine. We drink, well, in the Mediterranean diet, drinking wine, we drink during meals, never alone, in company, to enjoy life, not to forget life, not the children, but during meals, and mainly by men, the women less, much less. If you say mainly during meals, That means that you consume the wine with a lot of olive oil. And there are here and there in some papers which they do not have very well, they are not very well known, that might be that the way one is absorbed is influenced because in our stomach we have a lot of olive oil. I'm saying that to underpin the mechanism are still unclear, but something is there in the pattern beyond the individual foods. So we need a larger prospective intervention study to clarify not only the association between Mediterranean diet, but the Mediterranean diet as therapeutic treatment. And there are again several studies for osteoarthritis, for example, because they say, come on, they're reducing Mediterranean diet, reducing inflammation. Okay, I mean, we said, okay, have a better look. Then we have seen in the GIZI study, we have seen in the EPIC study that persons who they have coronary heart disease and they follow the Mediterranean diet, they have a decrease in fatality. So, could we consider the Mediterranean diet as treatment, apart of considering the Mediterranean diet for prevention? For example, well, I make a very quick search in the literature to see what is happening now, how they try to find how Mediterranean, the mechanism. Healthy individuals tolerate, it's a very, very recent paper. Healthy individuals tolerate dietary changes with minor microbial modification. So they study the role in the feces of microbiota. Microbiota is very good. Remember our yogurt, the traditional yogurt, I mean, with all the prebiotics. So they try to find, there are several scientific groups, they try to unshift this puzzle. Then proteomics also. Then genomics also. They try to find the why and how the Mediterranean diet is protected, if it could be used as therapeutic also treatment. So here in again another study, which I think is very, very important. It was published 2 years ago. That the Mediterranean diet intake was associated with 1/4 or relative risk reduction in CVD events and the mediated effects of biomarkers of inflammation, glucose metabolism, and insulin resistance contributed the most on the observed association. So the scientists, they open a new way to find out the how. Again, I mentioned before, for osteoarthritis, there are some indications that for the treatment and for the prevention that Mediterranean diet might be helpful. And then oleocanthal has been highlighted as a compound that may be therapeutic agent for future treatment of joint degenerative diseases. So one could ask how the Mediterranean is going to be developed in the 3rd millennium. Just prevention, only the therapy? This is the main question. But before finishing my presentation, and thank you all of you for your attendance, I want also to bring your attention to something which is going to be dealt by another colleague in this meeting, I think, today. This is the issue of climatic crisis. I choose the term climatic crisis and not climatic change because the last decade Mediterranean diet has evolved. when we are talking about Mediterranean diet, we are not talking only for a healthy dietary pattern, but we are talking for the Mediterranean diet as a sustainable dietary pattern. And this is what is coming, or already came with a publication in the Lancet in 2019, the EAT project. But I think that you have to think of that more carefully and to do whatever we do, not only for ourselves, for our health, but for the planet. So, for the third millennium, these are the areas which needed action as far as the Mediterranean diet is concerned. And clarify the undergoing mechanism. Clarify and find out if Mediterranean diet is good only for prevention or therapy could be considered. Which is the gene-Mediterranean diet interactions? This is a fascinating area for research. And then, of course, we are abandoning the Mediterranean diet, and we have to find a way to transfer that to the next generation. Otherwise, this dietary pattern, which has been developed for thousands of years and given to us, will not be in a position to give Mediterranean diet to our children. It's a pity, it's our responsibility. And thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Antonia. Thanks for your wonderful presentation. I believe that some of the concepts that you have, of the data you have described, are maybe not well known universally. You know, this is an international multidisciplinary conference, so it is very interesting to understand that there is a risk reduction in mortality or an increase in longevity for each degree of adherence to Mediterranean diet. So it is something that maybe our Chinese guests will like to know, because it is now evidence-based thanks to your publications. And of course, this is a keynote lecture, so we do not expect to have questions for the lectures, but however, if there are some, they could be addressed immediately after the first speech, which will be held by Giovanna Muscogiuri, who is a medical doctor working in the Endocrinology division at the University of Naples, Federico II. And she will talk about how Mediterranean diet influences human metabolism. And also Antonia has described some effects, for example, on glycemic controls, that is evidence-based. So Antonia, I will ask you if you remain with us while Giovanna is having her speech. You could maybe interact with her presentation. Many thanks, Giovanna, and the floor is
Thank you, Prisco. Thank you, everybody. I hope that you hear me very well. My speech will be on how Mediterranean diet influences the human metabolism. As you know, nutrition is a very important element of healthy style, and poor dietary habits can be a major risk factor for major non-communicable diseases. While food shortages afflict many developing countries, and you see me? You see me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. On the other hand, overweight and obesity have become a serious public health problem, especially in Western countries. And I show you some Italian data where you can see that there is an important impact of nutrition on on metabolism and on the risk of developing cardiovascular disease. As you can see here, the red bar are the people, are the female, while the blue bar are the male. And as you can see here, the female usually follow a healthy lifestyle compared to males. This is the situation in Campania region, and I would like to show you the some data from Campania region because it is the region where I live, but also because Campania is one of the Italian regions with a high percentage of overweight subjects and subjects with obesity. And as you can see here, 35 of subjects of females were affected by overweight and obesity, while 31% of males were affected by obesity and overweight. So, as you know, diet from the Greek word diaita means regime, a way of life, and it means that all food and drink that in terms of quality and quantity must be consumed daily in a balanced way to satisfy energy requirements. And as you can see here, why nutrition is important for metabolism, because as you know, a healthy lifestyle could contribute to control the weight and to stay active, but also we usually recommend to our patients to eat more cereals, pulses, vegetables, and fruit. Fats, choose quality and limit quantity. Sugar, sweets, and sugary drinks within the right limits. Drink plenty of water every day. Salt little is better, and alcoholic drinks, if so, only in controlled quantities. And these are the Italian guidelines for a healthy nutrition. The last recommendation is to vary your food choices often, and especially tips for special peoples. Also, the safety of the food depends on you, and I will show you in the next slides why. Diet therapy is a real therapy. This is because most of the time we used to prescribe diet to people that have metabolic disease, such obesity or dyslipidemia or type 2 diabetes. So we should consider that diet is a real therapy, and that uses a personalized diet to prevent and or cure certain disease. And so for this reason, we used to prescribe, mostly in Italy, the Mediterranean hypocaloric diet in order to treat subjects with obesity, or hypoglycemic diet to treat subjects with type 2 diabetes, and hyposodic diet to treat subjects with hypertension. Mediterranean diet is very important for metabolic disease, but the other adjunctive value of Mediterranean diet compared to the other nutritional pattern is that Mediterranean diet is a sustainable kind of nutritional pattern. And there is a sort of cycle between agriculture, food, cuisine, and medicine, because as we know, Mediterranean diet could be considered as a nutritional treatment for metabolic disease. So what is Mediterranean diet? As Professor Trichopoulou told us, Mediterranean diet is a nutritional model that is inspired by the traditional foods of the European countries of the Mediterranean basin, in particular Italy, southern France, Greece, Spain, and Morocco. And there is a kind of a pyramid of the food that we should eat according to the main meals and according to daily and weekly. As you can see here, there is the food that we could eat more frequently. And as long as we go upper, in the upper part of the pyramid, we will find the food that we should eat more rarely. Also, we can see that a sort of Mediterranean diet was also suggested in the context of the United States Department of Agriculture in the United States. And this is because also in the US, it was recognized that Mediterranean diet could be a tool to prevent and to treat metabolic disease. And we know that in US, there is a high prevalence of metabolic disease, and in particular obesity. So what we should do to follow a Mediterranean diet? We should privilege fresh, seasonal, and locally produced products, but also we should use the constant and appropriate flavorings. And another important characteristic of Mediterranean diet is to use typical products that were produced in the region and in the country where Mediterranean diet is followed. And this is very important for the preservation of a cultural heritage as well as gastronomic one, and made up of traditional smells and tastes that are not easily reproduced. So, the Mediterranean diet, where does it work? The Mediterranean diet and prevention of pathologies. So the first researcher that gave international visibility to the Mediterranean diet was Ansel Benjamin Keys, that contributed to the consolidation of the expression Mediterranean diet and gave medical and scientific dignity to this expression, codifying the characteristics of the diet. And in order to demonstrate the relationship between the diet and atherosclerosis, Keys undertook the so-called 7-country studies, investigated for over 20 years, 12,770 men, aged 40-59 years in 7 countries, that there were Netherlands, Finland, Greece, Yugoslavia, Italy, Japan, and the USA. And the main risk factors for the genesis of atherosclerosis was hypertension, hypercholesterolemia, and the level of animal fats in the diet. From Keys' discovery until now, you can see here that the number of scientific studies that were focused on the importance of Mediterranean diet as treatment of several diseases, and of course among them we have metabolic disease, you can see that there are more than 3,000 papers on this topic. And as you can see here, this is a meta-analysis that was published on the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. And there were an accruing evidence on the benefits of adherence to the Mediterranean diet on health. but also there was an important reduction of all cause of mortality that increased as long increased the adherence to Mediterranean diet. And in the same trend, there was a reduction of cardiovascular mortality, and in particular a reduction of the cardiovascular risk factors. And among them, as you know, there are metabolic diseases such as type 2 diabetes and dyslipidemia. But also the adherence to Mediterranean diet was associated to a decrease of cancer and neurodegenerative disease incidence. But as I previously told you, the Mediterranean diet was very important because it was a kind of nutritional pattern that has a sort of environmental sustainability. And as you can see here, there is like an environmental pyramid that was just the contrary of the nutritional pyramid. In fact, as you can see, the most of the food that we can eat in Mediterranean diet it was includes in the more sustainable part of the pyramid. And just to resume all the positive effect of Mediterranean diet on adiposity, on metabolism, we know that all the components of Mediterranean diet are able to increase polyphenols and unsaturated fat, and Na3-NSA fatty acids ratio. All this function has several consequences, like a reduction of oxidative stress, lipogenic gene expression, and a reduction of adiposity, the prevention of atherosclerosis, that ends with a reduction of inflammation that is typical of metabolic disease such as obesity and insulin resistance that often complicate obesity. For this reason, Mediterranean diet was recognized as UNESCO property, and in fact, in November 2010, UNESCO included the Mediterranean diet in the list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Giovanna. And you have actually completed what Professor Trichopoulou as largely described, and we wait for some question. If we have some question here on the panel, let's see if we have some question in the panel. Maybe we have some question. No question for us. So no question at all. So okay. I believe we can move. We can move to welcome, and of course, we know that some of the speakers has to leave. So thanks, Giovanna. We move to welcome Professor Chaoming Weng. Professor Chaoming Weng has a very long curriculum. She comes from the Department of Life Sciences of Bejing University of Chinese Medicine. We are really honored to have Professor Weng and Professor Shen here with us at this symposium. And we will have also the Dean, Professor Alonso of the Bejing University of Chinese Medicine on next Friday. So really thanks a lot for being with us, Professor Chaoming Weng. And we really would like to hear from your speech about the health wisdom in China's diet that I'm sure will contribute to this transdisciplinary conference that is broadcasted internationally. Thanks a lot, and I give you the panel.
So can you hear me? Can you see me?
We can hear you and we can see you, and we are glad to see you. Thanks.
Yes, the full screen. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer very much for your invitation. I'm proud of having this opportunity to share the topic of the wisdom of Chinese healthy diet culture. I'm Dr. Chaoming Weng from College of Life Science, Bejing University of Chinese Medicine. Well, what's the matter?
It is blocked. You can share the screen.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, this is our beautiful campus. This is our Qihuan Hall, our campus lake, our teaching office building, our teaching building. So, welcome to Beijing, China, for academic exchange. I also sincerely hope that the organizing meeting will consider holding such an academic conference in China, Beijing, at an appropriate time in the future. It is really not so easy to explain the wisdom of Chinese food culture in such a short time. So I thought of an aspect that everyone may perceive. I will start with the topic protecting the spleen and the stomach, and talk about some very healthy habits of Chinese diet and culture. In Chinese medicine, we believe that the spleen and stomach is the acquired foundation of the human body and the source of qi and blood. Therefore, taking care of spleen and stomach is very important for the human body. Our Chinese habit is to avoid raw and cold food. We have been warned by our elders since childhood not to eat raw and cold food, and try not to eat or eat less raw and cold food. So we all drink hot water or normal temperature water instead of icy water. We prefer hot tea. Most countries and regions in Europe and America drink icy water and eat raw and cold food. So when we travel abroad, we will feel very uncomfortable. But all these years, with the deepening of cultural exchanges, various living habits is intersecting. I can see that some hotels in the Europe and America have begun to prepare hot water and hot water pots for Chinese guests. Many high-level hotels prepare the Chinese food. This is the importance of cultural exchange. Just like our international interdisciplinary cooperation and exchange here, it is very important for us to explore the wisdom of life and health.
We can't hear you anymore. Chaoming, we cannot hear you. Maybe you should try again to disable the screen sharing and share again the screen. So we can't hear Professor Weng. We can't hear Professor Weng. So I ask to Professor Shen if Professor Shen is here with us. Can you join us? Maybe we can move to your presentation and then give the floor to Professor Weng.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Okay, thanks a lot, Professor Shen. So it was very interesting presentation that Professor Chaoming Weng was having, but however, we recover her, we hope, after your speech. So Professor Shen from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, she also belongs to the Bejing University of Chinese Medicine, will speak about the social and cultural determinants of Chinese nutritional habits. That is very interesting for our multidisciplinary audience. Thanks a lot, Professor Shen. The panel is to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, professors. I'm very honored to be here, have the opportunity to present my own thoughts on the dietetic and health in Chinese history and culture. I thank the organizers for inviting me here. I have already learned a great deal of scientific aspects of diet and nutrition from other speakers. Well, what I am going to present is another approach, a historical and cultural approach to eating and living well in China. China has a rich culture of the life nourishment. We call it Yangsheng. The modern Yangsheng practice have a deep root in the ancient years. A critical period of its development is from 2nd century BCE to 6th century AD. In history, we call it early medieval period. Of course, people at that time did not call it Yangsheng, but similar ideas and practice gradually took shape and spread to the whole society. The Asian ideas and practice contain many forms like meditations, massages, medicines, and of course, eating. Based on the theories at that time, one had to take a great care of when to eat and how to eat. Only in this way can keep one health and elevate one's life to a transcendent form of being. That is the immortals. Of course, some of the ideas and practice in early medieval China could be seen religious and superstitious in our modern eyes. But I believe these culturally specific ways of eating and not eating have their own values to our modern society. Even the religious part of the story can help us better understand the historical origin of some popular attitude towards food and diet in China today. Nutrition and diet are the first and foremost scientific questions, but they are also a cultural form with a particular sense. This is true to Chinese way of eating, and I think our European friends will not object that Mediterranean diet is also a cultural form of eating. Every diet have a long history of development. People in each region of the world surrounded by a particular environment in history. They made fully use of the natural resources at hand to nourish their bodies and to keep good health. A particular ways of eating and diet then took shape of their practice. I will tell you a bit of Chinese story of eating and not eating in history, and how they related to health and well-being. In doing so, I'm not trying to seek a scientific basis of ancient Chinese ideas, but to present a unique way of life that is related to eating and not eating. First, let's take a look at the title of my talk, The Art of Eating and Not Eating. In Chinese, we call it 服食 and 辟谷. These two terms are not alien to most Chinese people today, but may confuse non-Chinese speakers. 服食 related to the art of eating, and 辟谷 literally means avoiding guns, which is an art of not eating. These two arts seem at two opposing practice, but actually they are deeply related to each other. Both of them have their origin in Chinese medicine and Taoism. Before going into the detail, I will first give you an idea why they became essential ways of life nourishment in early medieval China. This is closely related to ancient ideas on human bodies and its state of being in Chinese history. Early medieval period is a critical time when traditional medicine theory and Taoism in China developed from a primitive state in a system level. The concept of the body in early medieval China is a complicated question. Here I will present it in a simple way. Look at this diagram. The center point of the circle at the bottom of the cone refers to a healthy body. Any deviation from this center refers to a state of sickness. This respects normal human bodies, easier to get sick. The goal of the that nutrition is not only bringing sick body back to the healthy point, but also attempts to elevate the whole state of body in a healthier level, which is represented by a small circle in the middle. The possibility of falling sick is significantly discrete. Beyond that, there is also an ultimate goal both in classical medicine and religion. It is a tip of the coin, which is entirely immune to sickness. In order to achieve the goal, one needs to rely on something more than medicine and drugs, but a holistic way of living, in which the things we can eat plays a significant part. From the point we get to the idea of 服食, the art of eating. Generally, 服食 is a way of prolonging life by eating tonic and nourishing herbs or minerals in place of staple foods. Broadly speaking, 服食 also includes some practice belonging to religion, like eating bread and eating talisman. The idea that food can benefit human bodies in miraculous way does not come out of the vacuum. It was closely related to the Taoist practice at that time. There were two schools of Taoism that actively promote the 服食, including 葛氏道, which is represented by the famous Taoist and Dr. Ge Hong. You may not be familiar with this name, but most of you must have heard the story of the Nobel laureate Tu Youyou and her story of discovering the Qinghao Su. Tu said he was inspired by a record from an ancient familiar book. The author of the book is Ge Hong. The other Taoist school was the school of Shangqing School. One of the famous figures in the school was Tao Hongjing. He is the author of the 本草经集注. This book is regarded as a medical classic at present. Even though both of the two figures are extremely famous in Chinese medicine history, their self-identity was no doubt a Taoist. Medical knowledge was a means for them to achieve the ultimate goals of Taoism, which is transcendence of life and immortality. They regarded the medicine as a lesser art, while the most superior art one needs to master is the physical cultivation and love nurturing. Anyone who knows something about early Chinese Taoism may be aware that they promote taking golden elixir to prolong life. An elixir is made of different kinds of minerals that were claimed to have the miraculous effects. These minerals, like cinnabar, realga, now we know they are toxic metals that can cause harm to human bodies. But at that time, people thought that minerals do not decay, so they can help people's body to escape aging and even death. The narrow understanding of 服食 as taking minerals may be misleading. 服食 actually consists of more than rational aspects of eating as healthy keeping practice that comes from the experience. Even though mineral elixir was valued for some several hundred years, people at that time were aware of their potential harm. They are advised to take some precaution before taking elixir. Taking elixir requires a healthy and balanced body's condition. In order to achieve this, one needs to take many kinds of herbs and foods in advance. If we take a look at Ge Hong's book, 抱朴子, we can find hundreds of things they recommend for 辅食. Most of the herbs, foods, things used both as food and drug. One may wonder, how do herbs and minerals have anything to do with food and nutrition? In traditional Chinese medicine, there are no clear boundary between food and drugs. The materia medica contains many kinds of food, and food is also considered to have their own healing properties. In an early medical class, 神农本草经, the author classified drugs in 3 groups: the top group, the middle group, and the bottom group. Drugs in the top group intended to prevent aging and prolong life. These drugs can lighten the body and purify the body of its toxic burdens. The middle group can cure illness and toxify the body, while the bottom group attacks the illness fearless. It could cause the potential harm. The materials used in 辅食 mainly comes from the top groups. From here, we come to the second point of my presentation, 辟谷, or the art of not eating. The concept of 辟谷 is also popular in China today. However, it is more related to the modern practice of controlling weight. Recent years, the intermittent fasting is also introduced to China from abroad. Some people related to the practice of fasting in Western culture to traditional Chinese concept of 辟谷. Both required a certain level of not eating to achieve better health. When we look back into the history, 辟谷 is actually very different from fasting. Literally, it means avoiding grains. In traditional China, 5 grains are the key staple foods for Chinese people. In Chinese medicine theory, the essence of the grains obtained through eating is transformed into qi and blood in the spleen and then transported throughout the body. This is the main source of the vital energy for human body. However, in the Taoist view, eating grains is also a constraint that keeps human as a mundane being. In order to make transcendence and achieve the immortality, one needs to avoid taking this mundane food. Instead, one needs to take herbs to maintain one's vital energy. In this sense, 辟谷 is also a kind of 辅食, but it takes a more radical approach that completely taking grains out of the daily diet. In their point of view, the main aim of 辟谷 is to eliminate the 3 corporal worms in human body, which lives on 5 grains. Only in this way we can keep their bodies in a perfect condition. 辟谷 is a complicated art. One cannot just stop taking grains in one day. In that way, you will be sick or even die. There were many detailed instructions in Taoism classic about how to 辟谷. One needs to gradually take grains out of the daily diet and replace them with the herbs that can enhance the vital energy. In our modern world, these herbs include many drugs that Chinese medicine uses as toxic and even food, tonics and even foods. One can easily get satiated by eating these things. Due to the time limit, here I have only gave you a short introduction of 2 practices concerning eating and living well in early medieval China. Of course, some of you may only find it an interesting story that have no concrete significance. Some of you may doubt its modern values because they contain many religious contexts which our modern peoples consider as unscientific. I definitely not suggesting that we should return back to this Asian practice, but this practice have a profound legacy in Chinese history and even influence the Yangsheng practice in today's China. It can remind us that everyday nutritional ideas and practice cannot be fully understood from a scientific perspective. A cultural perspective is also essential. In the following centuries after the early medieval period, Chinese elites and doctors gradually abandoned the controversial practice of elixir taking. Instead, other related ideas rose from the practice of fushi and bigu. Taking elixir was not only dangerous, but also expensive. Common people could not afford the cost to make elixir, so they turned to another common, accessible, and affordable things to maintain their good health. This practice gave up the religious goals to achieve the immortality, and then developed in a modern field of shiliao. This is healing by food. This field have deep roots in the traditional Chinese thinking that food and drugs are not too different, but overlaps. Healing by food is a superior kind of healing, since potent drugs may have side effects to the body. Food, on the other hand, is nourishing. To heal by food is now not attracted or attacking the specific cause of disease, but to bring the body back to a balanced state. Another lesson we could learn from the Asian practice is that eating is also a spiritual act. It not only gives us nutrition that sustains life, but also have more meanings in everyday life. This Asian idea, I think, can add an important spiritual aspect to today's materialized ideas about nutrition. Eating, to some extent, can be an everyday ritual that are crucial to our health, both physical and mental health. Nowadays, both in China and in the West, there is a burgeoning trend towards to a more mindful lifestyle. Bigu or intermittent fasting is also used in a way to achieve not only physical health, but also mental well-being. In this point, we find the echoes of Asian ideas in our modern society. This is what I want to share with you today. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Professor Shen. Thanks a lot, Professor Shen. Thanks a lot for your presentation. We have understood some basic information about Chinese cultural attitude towards eat and not to eat. And so it maybe becomes, it comes out that grains, so cereals, are not at the large bottom of the pyramid of nutrition, and this could be maybe online and in agreement with the latest pictures and figures of Mediterranean diet that reserve to grains and cereals a lower position. So we have to eat much more fruit and vegetables. That is something that maybe can become a common way of choosing. Kind of difference is that you do not eat raw foods, maybe fresh foods. Maybe I don't know if fruit and vegetables should be always cooked. That's a question. Do you have always to cook also fruit and vegetables, or you eat also salads, for example. So this kind of raw foods and fresh fruit, not cooked. And what about raw fish, not cooked fish or not cooked meat?
The fish and the vegetables can eat in this way. I just mentioned that one worms in the bodies called the wait a minute, maybe I will answer these questions in the Q&A part.
Okay, in the Q&A part. Thanks a lot. So let's move again to give the floor to Professor Chaoming Weng. And let's start from the part we lost. Okay, thanks, Chaoming. Thanks,
okay,
Professor.
Thank
Weng.
you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, yes.
Yes, okay. We begin from the last part.
Perfect. Let's begin from the slide we left. It was the one. It was on screen just before, about the spleen, and then we can move on with normally with your presentation that was already ongoing. Thanks a lot.
So we lost from this slide.
Yes.
Yes. So go on. Why incidence rate of cardiovascular diseases and obesity in Western countries is much higher than that of in China? I think this is very closely related to this drinking eating habit. Based on this understanding, I have much successful experience and clinical cases in practice. This involves the relevant contents of health management. I will share clinical cases with you on the roundtable podium on the 24th of this conference. Today, I just want to share some simple and easy healthy lifestyles suitable for wide promotion and dissemination. Mentioning this item, I'm thinking of a story about ginger. One year, I traveled to Europe, stayed in a hotel in Germany. In my spare time, I met the chef on the hotel in the garden. He was very interested to hear that I was a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine. He asked me what he could do to lose weight. He was already very overweight, more than 110 kilograms, and had high blood pressure. I asked about the medical conditions there. There is basically no traditional Chinese medicine available. I looked at his tongue coating. It is very thick and like this. It is very thick and white coating. So please look at your tongue and coating. So it's an easy way to digest. Just show your tongue and watch in the mirror and to see. And this is the tongue of very cold and damp. This is there is a basically so this time means he is in a very cold and wet constitution. I asked him if he had ginger in the hotel. He said yes. So I told him to eat 50 grams of shredded ginger every day. He said, no, that's too hot. Because he loves Coca-Cola. I said, you can put shredded ginger in the Coke. After a week, he told me that he had lost 12 kilograms. 12 kilograms. His stomach had retracted 2 belt buckles. 2 belt buckles. So, wow, isn't it? Just a small change. So, ginger tastes pungent and is warm. Its meridian tropism is to lung, spleen, and stomach channels. It has the effects of relieving cold on the surface, warming the middle, and stopping vomiting, warming the lung, relieving coughing, and detoxification. It is commonly used for wind cold, spleen and stomach cold, vomiting, lung cold, cough, relieving fish and crab poison. Ginger is an essential in Chinese kitchens. All fishy foods should be cooked with ginger, and it is also found in almost 90% of the traditional Chinese medicine prescriptions. It is a homologous substance of both medicine and food. In Chinese culture, ginger is the most important vegetable. It is a truth that children know when they learn to read from the very early time. If you have a cold, drink a bowl of ginger soup. If the female suffers from cold dysmenorrhea, drinking brown sugar ginger water is also very effective. This is the health importance of carrying and warming up spleen and stomach. Of course, it is not just a ginger that can warm and protect the spleen and the stomach, but also this kind of food and medicine with pungent and warm effect. I just take ginger as an example to talk about the importance of body transportation and the chemical function. Because in Chinese culture, it is not just integrants, calories that play a role. TCM pharmacology of traditional Chinese medicine is about 4 qi and 5 flavors, ups and downs, and choices made for different constitutions in a specific time and space. This is the dynamic wisdom of health preservation according to time, place, and personal conditions. Chinese people have
We've lost again Professor Weng. We can see the screen. We can see the screen, but we cannot hear from you. Okay, just go on with the screen. The Yellow Emperor's Internal Classic. 5 grains are for nourishing, 5 fruits are for helping, 5 meats are for filling, 5 vegetables are for lifting. Okay. We can see your screen, but we cannot hear you. So if you have concluded the presentation, maybe, or if you can leave and enter again. In the meanwhile, we can give the floor to Professor Santucci. Chaoming, are you here?
Yes, I would be pleased, but can you hear me?
Yes, Annalisa, we can hear you.
Okay, maybe I can share my screen because otherwise with Professor Weng.
It has been interesting to hear at our Chinese colleagues' presentations, as well as to Antonia lecture and Giovanna's presentation. Thanks a lot for joining us. Professor Annalisa Santucci is the chief of department at University of Siena. She is an expert in circular bioeconomy and sustainable food production. She will have a lecture on this topic for us, and it will be available online on YouTube for the next weeks at the Congress website. Thanks a lot, Annalisa. Here is the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Prisco, and thank you for inviting me to this multidisciplinary Congress, because I have really enjoyed all the previous presentations on the Mediterranean diet. Professor Antonia is wonderful, but I also appreciated a lot the Chinese colleagues with their very interesting point of view. And I also really enjoyed the part on art and medicine and Chinese art tradition. That has been very interesting to me. So thanks so much to Prisco and also all the organizers for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. As the food system encompasses multiple sustainable development goals, the so-called SDGs, threats and challenges related to sustainability should be and need to be approached by a very transversal way. In this respect, the Mediterranean diets, which goes very far beyond the food pattern of other conventional or newly inspired diets, as Professor Antonia explained us very well, and also the following colleagues. This also encompasses other inspirational dimension of sustainability as nature respectful landscapes, ways of optimizing water management, and cultural and social values that influence behaviors. In improving processes and changing attitudes, the environmental impact of foods must be assessed by adequate and widely adopted metrics, and that can be clearly communicated, shared, and aligned with consumer preferences. So let me please exchange the two items of the title of my presentation, starting from sustainable food production, and then I will talk about circular bioeconomy. I have decided to focus my talk on fruits and vegetables that are integral part of the Mediterranean diet, and at the same time also a relevant sector and section of the world food system. I have also chosen fruits and vegetables because the United Nations has declared 2021 as the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables. The year aims to raise awareness on the nutritional and health benefits of consuming more fruits and vegetables as a part of a diversified, balanced, and healthy diet and lifestyle, as well as to direct policy attention on towards sustainability, including reducing loss and waste of these highly perishable produce items. So in declaring 2021 as the National Year of Fruits and Vegetables, the United Nations General Assembly aims to raise awareness on several issues related to many sustainable development goals, to promote actions needed at the country level to increase the production and consumption of fruits and vegetables and make them more commercially and economically accessible to consumers, while generating also, of course, economic, social, and environmental benefits. Thus, health benefit of fruits and vegetables to strengthen the immune system, combat malnutrition, and help prevent diseases. We have heard a lot in the previous speeches and keynotes lecture. Diversified diet and healthy lifestyle, and then food and lost waste to respect food from farm to table through innovation, maintaining its quality and safety and quantity across the supply chain. Sustainable value chains by inclusive value chains that can help increase production and enhance availability, safety, affordability, and equitable access to fruit and vegetable to foster economic, social, and environmental sustainability. And then highlighting the role of family farmers for growing prosperity while enhancing nutrition resilience and agrobiodiversity. I've been very surprised when I have read this document of the United Nations and the FAO organization, because there have been 6 out of the 17 sustainable development goals that have been excluded in this selection, but I have decided to put them as well in my slide because I think that they can also support actions related to fruit and vegetables, like clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, required inequalities, peace and justice, strong institutions, and one of my favorite SDGs, this partnership for the goal. I have another preferred sustainable goal, which is the 5th, gender equality, and should be actually gender equity to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. And actually, really, gender is a crucial issue since women produce much of the world's fresh produce, and they are often responsible for harvesting, marketing, and processing. As consumers, they often choose what items to buy and how to cook them. But women face disadvantages at all stages in the chain as producers in their ability to access land, inputs, and advice, as entrepreneurs in getting finance to develop their business, as workers in terms of fair payment of their works, and as consumers in terms of education about food and nutrition. And this issue is an integral part of food sustainability. Now, food and vegetable production is crucial for the planet community, but it has now widely accepted that our food systems are increasingly detrimental to both human and planetary health. Food systems are not delivering at the moment the healthy diets needed for nourishment, with increasing prevalence, we have heard about this in the previous lecture, of all forms of malnutrition and increasing non-communicable diseases. all of which have been and are exacerbated by the current COVID-19 pandemic. Other issues include rising populations and consumption, increasing urbanization, decreasing arable land and water resources for agriculture, and the effects of climate change and possible food shortages. Chemicals to ensure productivity and to protect the crops may pollute the environment and damage biodiversity. So ensuring that fruit and vegetables contribute more to nutrition and health requires more comprehensive and holistic approaches. More efficient, more inclusive, and resilient, thanks to the Sustainable Development Goals, because the elements of the food system, agricultural and food supply chains, food environment, and consumer behavior require a concerted action. This food system approach to better nutrition considers the food systems in its totality. This is very important, considering all the elements, their relationships, and their related effects. Beyond the relevance to diet and nutrition, which is undoubtedly very, very relevant, food systems play also an important role in promoting environmental sustainability, climate change, adaptation and mitigation, biodiversity, soil and water management and degradation, inclusivity, viability for smallholder farmers, indigenous people, or as we have just said, gender equity and productivity, increased production and economic development. These are data regarding the huge production of food and vegetable in 2018, both in terms of quantity and types and in terms of geographic distribution of such productions. Nonetheless, production statistics cover only a few of the many species of fruit and vegetables that are grown and consumed. And a large proportion of the outputs of small-scale producers also does not appear in the official production and trade statistics. Although family farmers, who are often but not always small-scale producers, account for 80% of the world's food in value terms. Moreover, worldwide production in both for fruit and vegetables rose by about half between 2000 and 2018. And China is by far the largest producer in the world. But it is not still enough to reach what the WHO, the World Health Organization, recommends that people should eat at least 400 grams of fruit and vegetables a day. So the transition from production to sustainable production is a complex and multidisciplinary transition that requires to address many different issues. Adequate technologies to improve production, harvesting, and post-harvesting, and also marketing. Check of quality seeds and planting materials. Right choice of fertilizers to manage pests and diseases. Assessment of good agriculture practices, so crop rotations and intercropping, integrated production with livestock, soil amendments, reduced tillage, organic farming, but also care in the correct use of water and resources, protection of crop biodiversity, and also of neglected crops and wild species, attention to climate change, and responsible business with fair employment and work conditions, and also quality and safety and loss and waste issues. So quality and safety, as well as traceability, are big issues, with quality standards to be assessed and met, and safety risks kept under control. Quality and safety must be assured, while loss and waste should be minimized, And huge amounts of foods are lost or wasted every year. And loss and waste of fruits and vegetables means waste of nutrients, and reducing also the efficiency of and the sustainability of the food system related, and potentially with a negative impacts on the environment and the natural resource base. A great innovative role on these issues may be provided by bioeconomy. What is bioeconomy? Bioeconomy is in Europe a strategy that is part of the Green Deal, whose final goal is European Union become climate neutral by 2050, starting from a transition to a circular economy. This ambitious plan has been launched just before the COVID pandemic explosion in January 2020 by the President Ursula von der Leyen, just at the beginning of her work. So the transition from linear to circular economy, from linear economy where raw materials are transformed in products that are used and then generate waste, to circular economy is a crucial step in such an ambitious sustainable achievement, where in circular economy all products maintain their value as long as possible and there is no waste. When a product comes to its life cycle and the resources remain within the economic system so that they can be productively reused more than once to create new value, and so thus the economy is transformed and auto-regenerates while assuring sustainable development goals. So the keywords are reduce, reuse, and recycle in circular economy. And bioeconomy is the biological heart of circular economy in the definition of John Bell, who has been a former director of the UE Bioeconomy Commission. The bioeconomy means using renewable biological resources from land and sea, like crops, forests, fish, animals, and microorganisms to produce food, materials, and energy. But the most recent definition of bioeconomy says that bioeconomy is the production of renewable biological resources and the conversion of these resources and waste stream into value-added products, underlying these value-added products, such as food, feed, bio-based products, and bioenergy. So the bio-based economy aims to the production of bio-based products, exploiting differently the biomass also coming from agriculture to produce value-added products, highlighting the use of waste and residues as a resource. And this is linked to the sustainable food and feed system. What is very interesting is that the nutrients and the phytochemicals that are known to be beneficial in a wide range of health, well-being, and wellness applications for humans can also be recovered from vegetable wastes, thus contributing to the reduction of waste and loss and producing at the same time valuable compounds on the so-called one health, one single health for all the planet, humans, land, and all the ecosystem members included. Rethinking waste is supposed to be also economically relevant in perspective and is considered the last evolution from natural to fossil economy up to bioeconomy, an opportunity to connect and society within a global ecosystem balance. This is so true that bioeconomy has given a great impulse also to develop a more social representation of SDGs, transforming the graphics from a flat plane to a wedding cake, where biosphere is the basis for society, leading to economy. And also at the European level, bioeconomy has been transformed in by we economy. So underlying the social aspects of an issue this is related to all of us. And so also the Food and Agriculture Organizations of the United Nations has thus produced a new document where the 10 principles covering the different SDGs and many issues that we have talked about so far are included in sustainable, within the frame of sustainable bioeconomy for better food production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life for all. I would like to conclude my presentation as an academic professor and recalling that sustainability may be achieved only through a total innovation that can in turn be accomplished only by research and education. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks to you. Thanks to you, Annalisa. And it is interesting also to have provided these figures about the production of fruit and vegetables. We see China is very represented. And so in the production of vegetables, if I had looked well at the figures, and you can confirm. And so we have here still the last part of the presentation of Professor Chaoming Weng. Chaoming, I'd like you to go to the conclusion of your presentation if possible, so we do not have the risk to lose you again, if possible. Please turn on your microphone because we see your screen. If you are here, Chaoming, you can turn on your microphone. We cannot again see and listen to Chaoming. Maybe Chaoming, you could exit from the call and join into again, or try to activate the microphone. Otherwise, in the meanwhile, I would like to move to some questions that have been made until here, and are mostly my previous question to Professor Shen. I don't know if she's able now to answer to my previous question. If in China it is allowed to eat in a kind of traditional perspective on nutrition, to eat salads, for example, which are cold, not cooked, and not cooked meat, not cooked fish, and just fresh fruit, not prepared and not cooked. I don't know if Chaoming or Shen could answer to this question. Then we have some question about Mediterranean diet. Who's going to answer? Shen? Can you open your microphone? Or Chaoming is still trying to present?
Okay, I will answer the questions before
Thanks.
Thank you for the questions. Maybe I did not explain myself very clear in the presentation. First, I need to point out that the aim of my talk is not to compare Chinese Asian diet with the modern diet pyramid. I have no doubt that the diet pyramid is scientific, Avoiding grains is not very scientific. As for other food like vegetables and fish, of course, they are essential. In the end of the talk, I mentioned 食疗. Hating by food is just like other people talk. All these food have their own use in keeping health. However, I said it very clearly that I'm not pretending a scientific study, but a cultural and historical ones. As a humanities scholar, my aim is to find a social and cultural inspiration from history. Even though they are not scientific, but there are still some aspects that our society can learn from. I made 2 points in the conclusion. One is the Chinese culture value food as medicine. The other is to pay more attention to the influence of food and eating habit to mental health. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Shen. I don't know if we have still Chaoming Weng here coming. I don't know. Maybe she's not able. I am moving to some questions that comes from Victoria Mendoza Barros from Brazil to Chaoming. Which minerals are recommended to take during the meals? I don't know if Chaoming is able to answer even in the chat. Which minerals are recommended to take during the meals in the perspective of Chinese nutrition? The other question from the same Victoria Mendoza Barros from Brazil on the topic of Mediterranean diet is about olive oil. If which other healthy oils can be used in the meals? Olive oil only or others? In Mediterranean diet, we use always red wine. I can answer to this question. For Giovanna Muscogiuri, I can say that extra virgin olive oil is the top rated and the best to be used in the Mediterranean diet. So be sure about the extra virgin olive oil. That is the original one, which has antioxidative properties. And it has been found that also not only in the fresh use, but also when cooked, this oil, extra virgin olive oil, does not produce unhealthy molecules such as free radicals. So, of course, it is the choice of Mediterranean diet to use olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. For those people from Brazil that I imagine less familiar with the Mediterranean diet. The red wine, yes, it is a useful tool because it is full of polyphenols, but of course it cannot be drunk a lot. So let's say half a glass or 1 glass normally sized glass of red wine per day could be considered to be in the frame of Mediterranean diet. There are also for these some recognized properties of antioxidative properties, and of course, if it is not the result of some chemical processes in its production, it should be originally produced and bottled. And of course, you know that usually they usually contains sulfides unless they are biologic wines. I don't know if there are other questions. I think there are no other questions. Chaoming Weng has tried to connect, but she's, I think, not able to do that. Giulietta Aidar with Maria De Mello, would you like to have a kind of conclusion in absence of Professor Trichopoulou for this first China and Italy session? Thanks so much.
Maria, thank you. Maria, microfono, Maria.
Can you hear me? I think it was extremely important to see these various presentations, and to see this scientific approach as well as the cultural approach of both nations here presented. From a transdisciplinary point of view, I feel that the scientific approach is very important to elucidate one of the levels of reality of transdisciplinarity, which is all the implications of the macrophysical relations and articulation. And it's quite an improvement to see what was presented in terms of the reuse and the recycling, and this new approach to be integrated in sustainability. It's vital also in terms of transdisciplinarity that this approach to feeding and this approach to nutrition also leads to the articulation of other levels of reality as well. And when I mention it, I refer to what somehow was hinted by our Chinese friends when they mentioned that the culture, though it's not scientifically proven, the culture of integrated in nutrition from a Chinese perspective is also involving mental and a mental level of reality, as well as a spiritual level of reality. So to talk about nutrition from a multidimensional approach is very dear to transdisciplinarity, but at the same time to improve the multi-referential approach in the same level of reality, which I mean to be very careful how you treat and the change that is undergoing in the approach of nutrition on a macrophysical level of reality is also of great importance. And as Giulietta Haidar has always mentioned in our Congress, this possibility to open this conversation and this various approach is the most enriching value of this Congress. And to bring to the floor these different notions with different ideas is the greatest, and to open conversation is the greatest asset of this Congress. So thanks for all your talks during this day. And we're eager to hear more from it next Friday, so that we can deepen some aspects of both both perspectives of nutrition, as sustainability, not only from an environmental point of view, but from the human point of view, as the human being. It's not only sustaining, because all this economic sustainability, this let's say this environmental sustainability only is going to happen as long as human beings become sustainable in themselves, in their own personal evolution as humans. And this is the greatest point that the Congress is also trying to make. How we become humans so that we can make the world more human. Without our personal evolution, nothing is going to happen. And this has to come from inside and not from outside. It's a project. It's a personal inner project. It's not a project that has to come from outside, though it finds its means of implementation from the outside. That's all.
Thanks a lot, Maria. So everybody, see you next Friday at same time, and see you later.
See you.
See you. See you to everybody. And please, Dr. Shen, thanks a lot, Dr. Chaoming Weng, for having been with us. And if she wants, she can join next session eventually to complete her presentation with your principal, Professor Xu. She's welcome if you can advise her. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thanks, Annalisa, and thanks to all the other speakers that remained until now, and thanks to the President Julieta Idar. From Italy, from China, and from Mexico, hello to everybody. We cover all the times, morning, afternoon, and evening. Everything. That is. Bye.
Bye.
Maria, espera un poco, Maria.